Hey, empowered badass breeders, let's talk about heroic efforts. It's a really difficult conversation, and honestly, I don't even know what to say about it, but I feel like it needs to be talked about. I feel like you need a safe place to talk to it about. I feel like sometimes you just need to give yourself permission to make difficult decisions and ultimately do what you feel is right. Here's my 2 cents on it, because I think you have to come to terms with a few things if you're a breeder, and one of those is when to end suffering. I take that very personally with every dog I bring into my program. I feel like they count on me. They count on me to make those difficult decisions and to not prolong suffering when I feel like there is no more hope. And I know that that's a terrible feeling, and I know that it's not always realistic that a puppy's going to make it. And so when do you decide, does this puppy have a fighting chance, or am I just prolonging suffering? And it's a terrible place to be. And until you've been in that place, be really careful not to judge anybody else. We have enough judgment as it is, from family, from the public, on our own selves, judging and feeling shame or second guessing our decisions. So number one, I just want to impress upon the fact that nobody can say anything until they've done it. And even if they have, what I experience may be different from what you experience. And I'm giving you permission to either fight like hell or end suffering. And I have found a balance in doing that. There are signs and symptoms. When I start seeing those, I have come to terms with, I will no longer prolong suffering in a neonatal puppy. And then, you can go as far as, how long do you do CPR after a puppy is born, a stillborn puppy? How long do you do that? I typically will only do CPR for 3 minutes. That is what I do. Some will do longer. Some have brought puppies back and they've been fine. I do err on the side of caution, and I worry about developmental delays, the lack of oxygen in the brain, that there will be further issues, because I've seen it and I've lived it, and then I've had to euthanize later anyway. So my personal cutoff is when I start CPR, I give myself 3 to 5 minutes. And if there's nothing, then I stop, and I just have to believe there was a greater purpose for that puppy. I literally envision these little tiny newborns in the hands and in the hearts of children in heaven. And that is what I envision and what I feel. When I have a puppy that's not thriving, we absolutely employ intensive neonatal care therapy, tube feeding, medications, whatever we need to do to stop diarrhea, hydrate, and nourish these puppies. I will say, when I get to 3 days, 3 seems to be my number, when I get to 3 days and that puppy is not gaining or showing any signs of improvement, and in fact we're losing progress, losing weight, diarrhea is worse. And then there's also this smell. I call it death diarrhea. There's this smell and there's this look. And I can just, when I touch a puppy, the way it feels, to best describe it without being morbid or inappropriate, is they just become more stiff. They become more hollowed out in their face. You see it in their face. It looks more like a skull. And their legs are really, really thin. I think that would be the best way to describe it. And they lay there and they just have this god-awful cry. It's like the death cry also. And there's a different smell to them. So when I see those symptoms, those signs, I do opt to euthanize. I will not prolong suffering. I know that many of you are not okay with that you will do heroic efforts until the puppy naturally passes. I'm here to just say, whatever you feel like you need to do, but it's also okay to have in your heart your set guidelines of what feels right and what doesn't feel right, when to keep fighting and when to end suffering. Thanks for riding shotgun with me today. Sorry it was a little bit of a Debbie Downer conversation, but I think it's important to be had. What do we do when one of our moms lose 1 or 2 or 3 of their puppies? I want to help you help her through this. So here's a few things to do. Number 1, don't bring your emotions to her. They're very matter of fact. Like, dogs don't hold on to things like we do. That's just reality. There's so many studies about this, and you can even play around with it yourself if you don't believe me. Go ahead. If you feel bad and you're holding the dead puppy and you're telling him to say goodbye and you have this big production and you're sitting there crying, your dog is literally wondering what she did wrong. Why you're feeling the way you're feeling. She's mirroring your emotions you're projecting on the situation. Like, what's going on? What did I do? She's just feeding off of you. If you are just matter of fact, you'll let her know you did good, you're fine, it's okay, even though I know your heart hurts. I've been there. I've literally just had to protect my moms. Be happy, not happy, but be matter of fact and let her know you're fine, it's okay, no worries, you got this, Mom, you got this. And just focus on the puppy she has. Remove any deceased puppies. Don't make it a big production. They don't have rituals or needs to say goodbye. I think that's even more confusing. Don't make it a big thing. Just remove and let them know they're great. Good job. You did fine. They're going to mirror your emotions. You need to grieve and do whatever you need to do, not around your mom dog. I know it's hard, but they deserve that. So don't push or portray your grief, your feelings onto them. You need to put your big girl and big boy panties on and handle the situation matter-of-factly and grieve privately. 2, if they're producing too much milk, because now, you know, if they've had the puppies for a couple days, like shit happens. So if they lost some after they've been nursing them, the body knows how much they need to produce to feed whatever puppies they have. So the body is going to be making more milk than the puppies that are remaining can nurse. So you've got to really watch for mastitis. I err on the side of expressing the milk just a little bit to relieve any pressure. If the teat gets too full, I just want to make sure we're not building up too much. So I don't want to milk her or empty out the teats, because the body is going to keep saying, oh, I need to produce this much. So I want to tell the body, you don't need to produce so much anymore. Thanks for the reminder, right? So I just express a little bit to relieve any like fullness, so that we don't get mastitis and my mom's not uncomfortable and the remaining puppies can nurse and latch, because if the teat is too full and too hard, they can't get a good latch. So I just walk this fine balance and line of making sure she's not too full. So those are the top 2 tips when your mom loses a puppy during delivery and or anytime after delivery when she's nursing. Be brave and watch the boobs, the 2 B's of losing puppies. What are guardian homes and what are some things you should consider? Because believe me, I've heard so many stories and I've experienced so many things myself. Ultimately though, I have a whole entire class broken down of pros and cons, things to think about, in our mini series. How do you access that? It's a webinar, so you can watch the classes whenever you want. You'll go to badassbreeder.com, click on webinar, and then it's under the mini series. And what I've done is there's like 60 videos of topics broken down. So I spend an hour to 2 sometimes talking about one thing, whether it's Giardia, whether it's guardian homes, whether it's mastitis, whether it's tube feeding, so forth and so forth. Anyway, but a quick little ditty about guardian homes. What are they? Should you consider them? And just a few pros and cons. So I'm not going to dive real deep. I only got a few minutes. Guardian home is where the parent lives with their forever home, essentially. So there's lots of different ways in which you can mitigate and manage this through contract. What's allowed, what's not allowed, what's expected in dealing with another family. So technically you legally own the dog, but the dog lives with their forever family now, comes back to you to breed, goes back to them while pregnant, and a stud would be different, of course, and then comes back to have their puppies. When they retire, I spay and neuter, and then the family just keeps it, him or her. There's lots of different considerations as far as what that contract looks like to protect you and that they feel comfortable with. I share a lot of that in the mini series, and we'll be revamping that for the Badass Breeder Revised Edition number 2. That's coming eventually. But good things about guardian homes, of course, are the dog already lives with their forever home. But I will say they can be more difficult to manage during their litter because they're not at home, they're not used to living there. So we do bring them back around day 50 just to get them settled in so they're not so anxious or antsy or unsure. I will say the first litter is always the toughest. They don't know what to expect. They're a brand new mom. Everything is different and new, unless you have the guardian come back for visits, which you can do. I mean, there's lots of different ways you can do this. There's no one wrong or right way. It depends on your guardian families, which there's a lot to consider with that too. You're dealing with someone else's emotions. I've had guardians want to completely bail and be like, I'll just buy the dog out. We can't do this. I can't live without my dog. So I've had to learn and tweak and change the language a lot in my contract, that if you're that type of person, then don't be a guardian. Like, it has to be a selfless act. You have to be willing to be part of the bigger picture. You have to be willing to share a part of our dog to produce puppies that can change lives, heal hearts and change lives. So if I've had people then really think about that, sleep on it, think about it, and if that's not something you're willing to do, then don't be a guardian, buy a puppy. Some of my favorite guardians are people that have bought a puppy from me, and they've been very active still in our community. I've seen that they've just, the way they've moved and talked, and the way they've raised their dog, even on social media, and I've always kept a good connection with them. Those are some of my favorite guardians. They already have one of my puppies and they become a guardian. So then they always have a dog at home as well, so when the parent comes to breed, then they're not without a dog, because that is a consideration. If it's the only dog in the house, what does that look like? But then there's also a lot of other considerations of trusting somebody and or the pack environment when you bring in an unspayed female or a unaltered male, which is another whole ball game. Ultimately, at the end of the day, this is what I always have to think though. When I let a dog walk out the door to be in a guardian home, I have to be willing and be realistic that at some point I could lose that dog, whether it's accident, tragedy, break of the contract, lots of different things. I go into depth in this. I don't want to say a lot of it online, honestly, for everybody to see things that have happened, give anybody any ideas. So you have to be willing. These aren't lines that can't be reproduced. This isn't the core of your program. Lots of things to think about. So guardian homes, there's amazing, great things about them, but there's things you have to think about and make sure you're covered for. It's Riding Shotgun today.